Picture this. You're standing in front of one of the most sacred places on earth, surrounded by centuries of tradition and honor. The silence is profound, broken only by the rhythmic steps of guards who have sworn their lives to protect something greater than themselves. These aren't just soldiers. They're living symbols of duty, respect, and unwavering commitment. Now imagine someone decides that this moment, this sacred space, is the perfect opportunity for a joke. A few seconds of laughter that would echo through headlines worldwide and change multiple lives forever. What you're about to read isn't fiction. It's the true story of how a single moment of poor judgment at one of Britain's most revered locations sparked an international incident, ruined careers, and reminded the world why some traditions demand absolute respect. This is the story of ordinary people who forgot where they were, what they were doing, and who was watching. Sometimes the consequences of our actions extend far beyond what we ever imagined possible. Sometimes a joke isn't just a joke. Sometimes disrespect comes with a price that no one is prepared to pay. This is one of those times. Marcus Thompson had been planning this trip to London for months. As a travel blogger from Chicago with over 2 million followers across his social media platforms, he specialized in creating viral content from famous landmarks around the world. His girlfriend, Sarah Mitchell, worked as a marketing executive and had finally taken time off from her demanding job to join him on what they both hoped would be a romantic European adventure. The morning of October 15th started perfectly. The autumn sun cast a golden glow over Westminster as they made their way toward Buckingham Palace, cameras in hand and excitement building with every step. Marcus had already posted several stories from their hotel, showing his followers glimpses of traditional British breakfast and the iconic red telephone boxes that tourists loved so much. Sarah carried her professional camera, while Marcus handled the phone that had made him famous. His TikTok account at Marcus World Travels had gained massive popularity thanks to his bold approach to travel content. He wasn't content with simple tourist photos. Marcus pushed boundaries, created memorable moments, and always found ways to make his content stand out from the millions of other travel posts flooding social media every day. They arrived at the palace gates just as the changing of the guard ceremony was beginning to draw crowds. Tourists from dozens of countries gathered behind the barriers, phones and cameras ready to capture one of Britain's most famous traditions. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, children pointing excitedly at the approaching guards while parents struggled to get the perfect family photo. Marcus immediately began filming, capturing the crowd's energy and the magnificent backdrop of the palace. His followers loved behind-the-scenes content, and he knew this ceremony would provide hours of material for his upcoming posts. Sarah snapped photos of the architecture, the ornate gates, and the growing crowd of international visitors. The Queen's Guard began their approach, their iconic red tunics and tall bearskin hats creating an instantly recognizable silhouette against the palace facade. These weren't costume performers or actors. They were active duty soldiers from elite British Army regiments, serving a role that combined military duty with ceremonial importance. Each guard had undergone months of intensive training, not just in military skills, but in the precise movements, timing, and discipline required for this sacred duty. Lance Corporal James Harrison was among them. At 24 years old, he had served 3 tours of duty and earned his position through exceptional service and unwavering dedication. For him, standing guard at Buckingham Palace represented the pinnacle of military honor. His family had a long tradition of military service, and his grandfather had served in the same regiment during World War II. As the ceremony progressed, Marcus noticed something that sparked an idea. The guard stood completely motionless, their expressions hidden beneath their imposing hats, their eyes fixed straight ahead regardless of what happened around them. Tourists regularly attempted to get reactions from them, waving, making faces, even shouting, but the guards maintained their professional composure with remarkable consistency. Marcus had built his following by doing things others wouldn't dare attempt. He had climbed restricted areas of famous monuments, snuck into VIP sections of events, and created content that walked the line between bold and reckless. His followers loved the excitement, the unpredictability, and the vicarious thrill of watching someone push boundaries they would never cross themselves. "This could be amazing content," he whispered to Sarah as they watched the guards take their positions. "Look how serious they are. Imagine if I could actually get one of them to react." Sarah, focused on photographing the ceremony's formal beauty, didn't immediately understand what Marcus was planning. She had witnessed his content creation process before, but something about this setting felt different. The weight of tradition, the solemnity of the ceremony, and the obvious dedication of these military personnel created an atmosphere that seemed to demand respect rather than entertainment. The ceremony concluded, but several guards remained at their posts, beginning their duty shifts that could last for hours. Tourists continued to gather around them, taking selfies and group photos while maintaining a respectful distance. The barriers and rope lines made it clear where visitors were welcome and where they should not venture. Marcus spent the next hour studying the guards' routines, watching how they responded to different situations, and planning his approach. He filmed B-roll footage of the palace, interviewed other tourists about their experiences, and built anticipation among his live stream viewers about something special he was planning. "The dedication is incredible," Sarah observed, watching Lance Corporal Harrison maintain his position despite the increasingly warm afternoon sun. "Can you imagine standing that still for hours in full uniform while thousands of people stare at you?" Marcus nodded, but his mind was working differently. He saw the challenge, the potential for viral content, and the opportunity to create something his followers had never seen before. His most popular videos involved unexpected interactions with authority figures, security guards who chased him through museums, police officers who couldn't quite decide if he was breaking any laws, and officials who found themselves unwittingly starring in his content. As the afternoon crowd began to thin, Marcus made his decision. He had noticed a section of the barrier where the angle was perfect for both his camera and Sarah's professional photography equipment. The lighting was ideal, the background showcased the palace beautifully, and most importantly, Lance Corporal Harrison was positioned directly in the shot. "I'm going to try something," Marcus announced, pulling out his phone and opening his live streaming app. Within minutes, thousands of his followers were watching, their comments flooding the screen with excitement and encouragement. Sarah finally understood what he was planning. "Marcus, maybe we should think about this. These are actual soldiers, not performers. This is their job, their duty." But Marcus was already building momentum with his audience. He had learned that successful content creation required commitment. Once he started something, backing down disappointed followers and hurt engagement rates. His comments section was exploding with suggestions, dares, and increasing excitement about whatever he was planning to do. The stage was set. The cameras were rolling. Thousands of people were watching live, and millions more would see whatever happened next. Marcus had no idea that his next few minutes would spark international headlines, destroy careers, and serve as a harsh reminder that some boundaries should never be crossed. Lance Corporal Harrison stood at attention, unaware that he was about to become the center of a global controversy that would change his life forever. The golden afternoon sun continued to shine on what had started as a perfect day, but perfect days sometimes end in ways no one expects. Marcus positioned himself carefully, making sure both his phone camera and Sarah's professional equipment captured the perfect angle. His live stream count had reached 15,000 viewers, with comments flowing so fast they became a blur of excitement and anticipation. He had built his reputation on delivering moments that others wouldn't dare create, and today felt like the perfect opportunity to exceed even his own standards. Lance Corporal Harrison remained at his post, eyes fixed straight ahead, completely unaware that he was about to become the unwilling star of content that would be viewed by millions. The training that had prepared him for this duty emphasized the absolute importance of maintaining composure regardless of distractions, provocations, or unusual circumstances. He had successfully ignored crying children, aggressive tourists, and countless attempts to break his concentration over the past 6 months of ceremonial duty. The afternoon crowd had thinned to perhaps 50 tourists, creating the perfect, intimate setting for what Marcus had planned. Sarah watched nervously as he checked his equipment one final time, ensuring that every angle was covered and every moment would be preserved in high definition. All right, everyone. Marcus spoke directly to his live stream audience, his voice carrying the confidence that had made him famous. You've been asking me to push boundaries, to create content that nobody else will make. Today, we're going to see just how professional these British guards really are. He approached the barrier that separated tourists from the guard's position. The rope line was clearly marked, and several small signs indicated that visitors should maintain distance and show respect for the ceremony and personnel. Marcus had noticed that most tourists stayed several feet back, taking photos from a comfortable distance that acknowledged the solemnity of the guard's duty. Instead, Marcus moved directly to the barrier, positioning himself as close as possible to Lance Corporal Harrison. The guard's training kicked in immediately. He sensed the presence but maintained his focus, eyes forward, expression unchanged beneath his iconic bearskin hat. Marcus began his performance. He started with exaggerated facial expressions, making ridiculous faces directly in the guard's line of sight while maintaining a running commentary for his live audience. "Look at this dedication," he said, his voice loud enough for nearby tourists to hear. "This guy won't even blink. Let's see what it takes to get a reaction." The initial approach drew laughs from some nearby tourists who gathered to watch what they assumed was harmless entertainment. Marcus's followers flooded the comments with encouragement, daring him to escalate further. The viewer count climbed toward 20,000 as word spread across social media that something interesting was happening at Buckingham Palace. When facial expressions failed to generate any response from Lance Corporal Harrison, Marcus escalated to physical gestures. He began jumping up and down, waving his arms wildly, and creating a scene that drew attention from across the courtyard. Sarah continued photographing, though her discomfort was becoming increasingly obvious. "Marcus," she whispered during a brief pause, "maybe we should stop here. This is getting pretty intense, and people are starting to stare." But Marcus was committed now. His audience was engaged, his viewer count was climbing, and backing down would disappoint the thousands of people who had tuned in specifically to see him push boundaries. He had built his brand on going further than others would dare, and today's stream was already generating more engagement than most of his recent content. Lance Corporal Harrison's training was being tested in ways that went beyond normal ceremonial preparation. While guards regularly dealt with enthusiastic tourists and occasional disruptions, Marcus's behavior was becoming increasingly aggressive and targeted. The young soldier's jaw tightened slightly, the only visible sign that he was aware of what was happening, but he maintained his position and composure. The situation escalated when Marcus decided to cross the barrier. "Watch this, everyone," he announced to his live stream, stepping over the rope line that clearly marked the boundary between public space and restricted area. "Let's see what happens when we get up close and personal." Several nearby tourists gasped. A mother quickly pulled her children away, recognizing that what had started as silly entertainment was becoming something more serious. Sarah stopped photographing entirely, her face showing clear distress at how far the situation had progressed. "Marcus, get back here," she called out, but her voice was lost in the excitement of the growing crowd that had gathered to watch the spectacle. Now standing directly beside Lance Corporal Harrison, Marcus began the most inappropriate phase of his performance. He mimicked the guard's posture, standing at exaggerated attention while making mocking faces. He pretended to march in place, creating a bizarre parody of military precision while maintaining his commentary for the live stream audience. "I think I could do this job," Marcus laughed, his voice echoing across the courtyard. "How hard can it be to stand still and look serious?" The comments on his live stream had become a mixture of excitement and concern. While many followers encouraged him to continue, others began questioning whether he had gone too far. Some viewers started asking about the legality of what he was doing, while others shared the stream across different platforms, expanding the audience exponentially. Lance Corporal Harrison's situation was becoming untenable. His training emphasized maintaining composure, but it also required him to protect the dignity of his position and the institution he represented. Marcus was now close enough to touch him, creating a security concern that went beyond simple tourist disruption. The breaking point came when Marcus reached into his backpack. He pulled out a foam finger, the kind typically seen at sporting events, and began waving it inches from the guard's face while chanting made-up cheers. "Give me a G. Give me a U. Give me an ARD," he shouted, treating the solemn ceremony like a college football game. "This is for Queen and country, right, buddy?" Marcus said, moving even closer to Lance Corporal Harrison. "Come on, crack a smile. It's just a job." The foam finger touched the guard's uniform. In that moment, several things happened simultaneously. Lance Corporal Harrison's training kicked in with responses designed to protect himself and his post. Palace security, who had been monitoring the situation with increasing concern, began moving toward the disruption. Other guards positioned nearby received silent signals to be ready for potential escalation. Sarah, watching from behind the barrier, realized that what had started as content creation had become something much more serious. The crowd around them had grown to over 100 people, many filming with their own devices. The situation was being broadcast live to thousands of viewers while being recorded by dozens of tourists who had never expected to witness anything like this during their visit to London. Marcus, still focused on his live stream performance, remained oblivious to the security response developing around him. His viewer count had reached 30,000 people, making this one of his most watched live streams ever. The comments section had become chaotic, with followers simultaneously encouraging him to continue and warning him to escape before security arrived. What happened next would be replayed millions of times across news networks, social media platforms, and viral video compilations. The moment when entertainment crossed the line into international incident. The moment when a young soldier's patience finally reached its limit. The moment when Marcus Thompson learned that some boundaries exist for reasons that go far beyond simple rules and regulations. The foam finger incident would be remembered as the point of no return, the exact moment when a day that started with tourist excitement became something that would generate headlines around the world and change multiple lives forever. The foam finger touching Lance Corporal Harrison's uniform triggered an immediate and overwhelming response that Marcus had never anticipated. Within seconds, the situation transformed from viral entertainment into a serious security incident that would dominate international news for weeks. Palace security descended on the scene with military precision. 6 officers surrounded Marcus before he could fully process what was happening, their movements swift and professional as they secured the area and assessed the threat level. His live stream continued broadcasting to over 30,000 viewers who watched in real time as entertainment became crisis. "Sir, you need to come with us immediately," the lead security officer commanded, his voice carrying an authority that cut through Marcus's performance persona. "You are in violation of multiple security protocols and will be detained for questioning." Marcus's phone, still streaming live, captured every moment as he was escorted away from Lance Corporal Harrison's post. The comments section exploded with confusion, excitement, and growing concern as viewers realized this wasn't part of the planned entertainment. His follower count continued climbing as the stream was shared across platforms, but the viral moment he had sought was becoming a nightmare he couldn't control. Sarah watched in horror as her boyfriend was led away by security personnel. She continued photographing, though her hands shook as she documented what felt like the complete destruction of their carefully planned vacation. Other tourists backed away, sensing the seriousness of the situation and wanting no association with what had transpired. Lance Corporal Harrison remained at his post, but the incident had taken its toll. For the first time in months of ceremonial duty, his composure had been genuinely tested beyond reasonable limits. The touching of his uniform represented not just personal disrespect, but an assault on centuries of military tradition and the dignity of his position. His commanding officers would later note that his restraint under such circumstances reflected exceptional professionalism and discipline. The aftermath began immediately. Marcus was taken to a secure facility within the palace complex where he underwent hours of questioning by security personnel, local police, and representatives from multiple government agencies. His actions had triggered protocols designed to handle potential threats to national security, and each agency needed to determine whether his behavior represented simple tourist misconduct or something more concerning. "Do you understand the seriousness of what you've done?" asked Detective Inspector Sarah Crawford during the initial interview. "You've disrupted a military ceremony, violated security boundaries, and created an international incident that's already generating news coverage across multiple continents." Marcus finally separated from his live stream audience, and the adrenaline of performance began to comprehend the magnitude of his situation. His phone had been confiscated, cutting off communication with his followers and eliminating his ability to control the narrative that was developing around the incident. Meanwhile, the video content from his live stream was being downloaded, shared, and analyzed by millions of people worldwide. News organizations picked up the story within hours, with headlines ranging from "American tourist disrupts Royal Guard ceremony" to viral video shows shocking disrespect at Buckingham Palace. Sarah spent the afternoon navigating a bureaucratic maze as she attempted to determine Marcus's location and legal status. British authorities were thorough but professional, explaining the various laws and protocols that had been violated while processing her boyfriend through a system designed to handle much more serious threats. The international response was swift and overwhelming. British media outlets covered the story extensively, with royal correspondents providing context about the importance of the guard ceremonies and the level of training and dedication required for such positions. Military veterans appeared on news programs to explain why Marcus's behavior represented such a serious breach of respect and protocol. American news networks picked up the story, framing it as another example of social media culture gone wrong. Travel bloggers and content creators found themselves defending their industry while distancing themselves from Marcus's specific actions. His social media accounts were flooded with comments ranging from support to outrage, creating a polarized response that reflected broader cultural tensions about appropriate behavior and respect for tradition. Lance Corporal Harrison became an unwilling celebrity. Video clips showing his remarkable composure under pressure were shared millions of times, with commentators praising his professionalism and discipline. However, the incident also placed enormous pressure on him and his fellow guards, who suddenly found themselves under international scrutiny that went far beyond their normal ceremonial duties. The legal consequences for Marcus were substantial, but not as severe as they could have been. After 18 hours in custody and extensive interviews, he was charged with public disorder, trespassing on protected property, and disrupting a military ceremony. The charges carried potential fines and possible jail time, but more importantly, they guaranteed that the incident would follow him permanently. His release from custody coincided with the peak of international media attention. Photographers and journalists surrounded the facility, eager to capture images and quotes from the American tourist whose behavior had generated such widespread controversy. Marcus emerged to face a media storm unlike anything he had ever experienced. "I want to apologize," he said during an impromptu press conference outside the detention facility. "I never intended to disrespect anyone or cause an international incident. I was trying to create entertaining content for my followers, but I realize now that I crossed lines that should never be crossed. But the apology came too late to prevent the consequences that were already unfolding." Marcus's primary sponsors began dropping him within hours of the incident. Tourism boards that had partnered with him for promotional content issued statements distancing themselves from his behavior. His social media accounts, while gaining followers due to the controversy, also faced serious backlash that damaged his reputation permanently. Sarah, who had been largely innocent in the incident, found herself caught in the media attention and public criticism. Her professional photography career suffered as clients associated her with the controversy, despite her clear discomfort with Marcus's behavior during the incident. The broader impact extended far beyond the individuals directly involved. Security protocols at royal sites were reviewed and strengthened following the incident. The ease with which Marcus had crossed protective barriers highlighted vulnerabilities that required immediate attention. Tourist access to certain areas was restricted, disappointing countless future visitors who would pay the price for one person's poor judgment. Travel content creators across all platforms faced increased scrutiny and criticism. The incident became a cautionary tale about the dangers of pushing boundaries for viral content, leading to industry discussions about responsibility, respect, and the true cost of social media fame. Lance Corporal Harrison continued his duties with distinction, but the incident followed him throughout his military career. While many praised his professionalism under pressure, the unwanted celebrity status complicated his service and personal life in ways that extended far beyond that October afternoon. 6 months later, Marcus returned to Chicago with his influencer career effectively destroyed, facing ongoing legal expenses and carrying the permanent reputation as the American tourist who disrespected the Queen's Guard. His relationship with Sarah ended shortly after their return, another casualty of decisions made during those few minutes outside Buckingham Palace. The incident became a permanent fixture in discussions about social media responsibility, cultural respect, and the true cost of viral fame. What started as an attempt to create entertaining content became a cautionary tale studied in media ethics courses and referenced in discussions about appropriate tourist behavior. The foam finger that triggered the confrontation was retained as evidence during legal proceedings, but it ultimately became a symbol of how quickly entertainment can become disgrace, how easily respect can be abandoned for attention, and how the consequences of our actions can extend far beyond anything we ever imagined possible. Today, videos of the incident continue to circulate online, serving as a permanent reminder that some boundaries should never be crossed, some traditions demand absolute respect, and some moments of poor judgment can change lives forever.